Hello, and I am Lynnie Godfrey. Thank you so much for joining us at Lynnie Godfrey Straight No Chaser. This week, no music right now. I had a good time playing my theme song, but we're going to go on and straight into our subject now because of the simple fact that last week, October the 8th, I was shut down, and my two wonderful guests did come on, but it couldn't proceed because I could not get online. I've learned how to do some other things now a little better, so hopefully that won't happen again. But I wanted to introduce them to you one at a time because I think met them both in different parts of my life, and I think that they're both very talented, very humble, very humane, very lovely, lovely women. And I'm so proud to be talking about this subject in which both of them are involved and how they are involved, that they're both writing plays about the Black culture. One of them is a member of the Black culture and one is not. So we're going to talk about the process and progress of these particular plays and the works that are in progress, and see how they feel about working with a person like me. I am also going to say that we're going to do a little after show afterthought so I can put it up on Facebook. But the follow up on this is that we've already been asked to speak about this on November the 14th to ask these ladies to come with me and speak on another podcast. And we will be airing that and all the information very soon. And I'm very happy that this is an opportunity for them to speak their minds. But before we get to both of them together, I want to introduce you to them apart, individually. And I thank you all, and thank you all, people, everyone, for starting to join in. We made it, everyone. It's wonderful that people are coming in and joining this conversation. My first guest is one who is new to this program. I don't know, and I'll have to ask her how new she is to the process of the podcast, but she is a teacher and a playwright. She has based in Brooklyn. She has been a part of a group called PIP, Plays in Progress. It's a theater group of professionals in Hudson, New York. She serves on the board of the League of Professional Theater Women, which is how I met her, the curiosity that she had to come into a, um, a meeting that we called a circle, the producer circle. And she wanted to see well, she'll have to tell you why she came into that circle. I guess what we were doing and what she could learn from it after having been in a playwright circle. But before that, I want to talk about some of the things that she's done. She was chosen for the Short Play Festival at the Center for Performing Arts in Rhinebeck. And her play, Do I Hear $5? It's an interactive play. It was produced at St. Clements in New York City. She's studied writing with Robert Henley, and she has also done work, who was a founder of the Philadelphia Theater Company. But she's also done a lot of work with the ensemble company in Manhattan. One of the things that I'm very proud of is that she was a professor of English as a second language at NYU. And during that time, she co-produced an award-winning video called Crossing Borders. It was based on an innovative program of cross-culture communication. And this is why I think that she is the perfect person for what we're doing now, because of the simple fact that I don't even think that she understood that she had that ability. But right now, it's and Cross Borders has been in numerous conferences. There's a play that she worked on with PIP called Penn's Place, and I was invited to come and hear this play because I'd heard about it a long time. And it's from that meeting that we created a bonding that this is the play I think that will bring her to prominence and people will understand her depth. And I am now talking about, if she will turn on her camera, my new friend, because when you were in certain ages, friends are hard to find. My new friend, Ellen Clarkson. And welcome, Ellen Clarkson, so much to this medium of webinar and Zoom. And I'm so glad to have you here. I really am. I'm so proud of you. Um, I'm proud of knowing you and your sensitivity and your talent. And thank you for coming on this show. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a very wonderful feeling to smile without stopping for as long as you were speaking.
Well,
oh my.
I'm so glad, to have you. I'm going to join this group with another woman who, you all these inspire me so much because you both have been doing a lot of things for a lot of years. And it's not that you've switched. Now you've just enhanced what you were doing with the talent that you've learned over the time. And this particular woman now I've known for, I guess, about 10 years. She, unlike you, is familiar with this medium because I have dragged her, as I will you, all over the place to speak about the arts. And I wanted everyone to know her work. Her name is Celeste Bedford Walker, and she is a playwright who has been in this business for probably close to half a century. She's written over 40 plays. She is a recipient of the TIL's Life Achievement Award. She's also a Guggenheim Fellow and recipient for a play that we are working on in progress, which has the title. I want to say this right because I have the very first title she works with, and I want to get her title right. The Heirs of Cedar Branch, but I love Heirs Property. I'm going to say it out loud on air. Yes, but it's up to her what she's going to name it. She's been working on that, but I mean, she has done so many plays and musicals over the years. I think you're probably most familiar with the play that I have directed the reading of, which is Greenwood, an American Dream Destroyer, which Ellen had the opportunity to see in one of the renditions that we did. She is also known for Distant Voices because there's a publication of her play Sassy Mamas, that Sassy Mamas and other plays. There are so many plays in this publication, but I'm not going to say too much more. I think you all have are familiar with it. You're also familiar with her play Camp Logan, which is a Texas historical event that actually happened that she recaptured in play form. So without further ado, I will then introduce my second guest, who is a good friend and who inspires me also. Celeste, won't you come on camera? Miss Celeste Bedford Walker. Celeste? There she is. Look at her. She's just beautiful. There she is. Hi, Celeste. Welcome.
Hi, Lynnie. Hi, Ellen.
Hi.
Ladies, thank you very much for indulging me. I think the whole process of uh, people understanding how a play starts is a very mysterious thing, I think, because they see it at the very end. But I want to ask you all a couple of questions, and I hope it leads to the plays, but I want to go back to when you were younger, when you were younger, um, in your life, uh, what was your contact with other races like? I'm gonna start with you, Celeste. Did you have a lot of contact in Houston, cross culture?
I did not. I went to an all black, well, I lived in an all black neighborhood and section of town. I went to an all black elementary school, an all black high school, all black college. I first started to intermingle with other races when I got my first job at about 20 or 21. I was still in college, but I had a part-time job, and
Mhm.
that's when I first started to intermingle with other races.
Hmm. Helen, what about you?
Oh my goodness. I wish I could say I did not, which is better than what I have to say. Uh, there there were there I there were black women mainly in my life. Um, but it was a very long time ago, and these were, working people who worked in our home. And I'm embarrassed. That's all. That's all. I
No,
mean,
and don't be embarrassed because these jobs were very, very reputable jobs. These women worked in those homes and they put their children through college and bought homes. And it was an uh, it was a method by which people earned money respectfully, uh, and those opportunities were the ones that were open to them. And we need to, and I believe in my generation and younger, need to really appreciate that because that was a position that we were in. Uh, I ask these questions because both of you are very, very sensitive about the pieces that you're working with and are do the research. Both of you done incredible research on the pieces that they are. Both pieces deal with Black culture, and I wondered in your life if you had that interaction, and neither of you have, with the
Well,
other. Now, Celeste, yes.
I do need to make a correction. Um, my mother and my father, uh, well, my mother, she was a domestic.
Mhm.
And the first, I did have encounters with white people, and they were people that my mother worked for. And there are some names to this day I always remember and think about. I remember the wonderful, wonderful lady she worked for named Miss Virtue. And I still think about her. She would send us things. She'd send the children little gifts and things. She'd ask about us. She'd send us cards. And really, uh, she was my model of a white person, a white woman.
The
You
model.
just so
Mm.
sweet and kind and always interested. And most of the people that my mother worked for, of course, they were all white, but most of them were very kind, very interested. And like you said, it was a very, very reputable job.
Mhm. No, those
And
jobs are reputable. You know, the the thing that I'm trying to work around in the circle is how we got to where we are in our society, where we got to the point where because you were not in a certain circle, you were not forbidden, but it wasn't an approval for you to dip into certain other circles. And I'm thinking, is it a requirement that you knew that circle or the other culture, or is it something that we're trying to do now, which is a collaboration of people, of when you work on a project that is not a project that inherently is yours. I want to give an example of myself because I want to put myself in this. One of the things that I do in the company that I am artistic director of, in Essence of Acting, is that I like to pull out the classic pieces. Yes, of course, because it is a multiracial group. We do things like Raising the Sun, but we also did Death of a Salesman early on, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we started doing it. And I remember there being an issue with that production, I think out west in Seattle or someplace, where the estate of the author pulled it out because there was cross culture casting. And that's a whole nother subject. But one of the things that I think that made the experience successful for me is that, excuse me as I grab, this phone to make sure that it doesn't ring during this, because in in my life, the phone will ring as soon as we get deep into conversation. Is that I found a similarity in it that was universal. And I think that the sensitivity of recognizing that universality of what we all go through, we all experience joy together, we all experience pain together. We unconsciously are discovering each other's culture without knowing it. Sometimes we do it on television, sometimes we do it through film, sometimes there are cultures that I didn't know about, I don't know about, other than my exposure to it at film. So when approached to do a play that is not in my background, I carefully, just like you two did, try to do the research and try to find the consultant. I've been called, I think today, it was written that maybe I'm a sensitivity consultant, um, you know, uh, on what we have in common and what we have that is not in common. And in these two plays, and I'm going to ask you to describe them so that the audience will understand what these two plays are about. And then I'm going to see if we have something similar and what the difference is. Ellen, first go and describe Pin's Place. What your,
Well,
yeah.
let me just start from just a little bit before that. My experience is completely different from Celeste. I wish it were more like hers, but I don't believe that the woman who worked for us would have thought we were wonderful people. We we kept a great distance. Okay, it's just the way it was. That's all. It was the way every family I knew was. Uh, the maid did not ever sit down with us to dinner. She was in the kitchen, we were in the dining room. We were not a fancy family by any means, it's just the way it was. Then when I was in high school, first of all, in my elementary school, I don't know if there was any Black child. I don't think there was. This was a suburban community in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Then in high school, I noticed that the Black students were in the trade area, the what do you call it?
More,
Educational.
commercial. The general academic diplomas
Well,
as
it wasn't
opposed
even,
to
it was
academic.
all working, working with their
Yeah,
hands.
Vocational.
work oriented. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I
Trade
mean,
oriented.
there's a word for it, but I can't think of it right now. And that was in the basement. And we were upstairs, and occasionally I'd leave school. The neighborhood was all, one part of it was quite wealthy, the other part of it was poor. And that's where Italians and blacks live. This is what I knew. This is how I was raised. This is what I knew. And sometimes I'd see fights outside of the school. So I just had no connection at all. I think what happened is that as I grew and this is probably fairly recent. Well, no, I shouldn't say recent. No, I've been a Buddhist for 52 years. And in doing so, I became more human. I began to understand life, all life. And so that's how I started to change. But it wasn't that took, I'm old, so it took a long time to get there.
Stop saying that. Yes.
So now we get to this play, and if I tell you how this started, I mean, it's bizarre. I don't think I've even mentioned this to you, Lily. I was trying to write a play about Donald Trump to see if I could make him a human being. Uh,
Oh,
did
you never
he,
told me
what,
that part.
I
No.
know. Was he, what was it there? We all have that within us. So where is it? Where was it? Well, I couldn't, I couldn't go there. So I had him in Chicago for some reason, maybe because my husband grew up in Chicago. I just picked these places. And then I said, okay, drop that, drop it. So now he went to the South. Uh, and where? In Georgia, because I have a friend who lives in Georgia. I've never been to Georgia. My friend lives in Atlanta. So I started doing some research about the South. But for some reason, when you go to the history, you're not in Atlanta, you're in the Gullah Geechee culture and the Gullah Geechee corridor of Georgia. And it was fascinating because I was fascinated how the Gullah Geechee kept their African culture more than, and this is what I read, more than
They
any other
sustained it
culture
very
because,
strongly. Yes. Mhm.
yeah, because they were separated from the mainland and they developed their own language, Gullah language.
Mhm.
And of course, I knew nothing about any of this. So that drew me in. I couldn't resist it. And I didn't know where to go with it. And I was talking to Lynnie, and Lynnie said to me, so this is about a black man. And I said, no, 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 he's white. And she was polite enough to let it go. But we revisited this a few times. And I have to say, Lynnie opened doors for me because she listened to the play, she heard the play, and she held her position. This is not a white man, Ellen. You may not know it, but I know it. And I listened because I respect you, Lynnie. And so I listened. And all of a sudden, doors opened in my brain, and creativity just started flowing because so many things became richer. Who is he? What is his problem? And one thing led to another, and it was exciting. It's a process. I mean, yes, I'm finished, but you're never finished. So it's a process watching this man grow and seeing who these characters now are. There's a ghost in the play, and I saw him one way, and now I see, no, that's not who he is. He's a black man. And that's very relevant here because um, he happens to be the father of the protagonist who appears to be a white man. So, what is going on here? The audience doesn't know. And it's just become a very exciting process. So here, a girl who had no experience and actually stayed away because I didn't know what to make of anything, any of it. I mean, I don't even, I can't even tell you. It's so embarrassing. My mother would say, well, we saw people on the street, and she would say, they certainly have rhythm.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Okay, so I was a child, okay? I just
Well, but
absorbed,
but but it's also another time, and it's another. There's an understanding about a certain ignorance about people when you don't know about them, and
yeah,
this is what turns this all the way around. Is because it was so well written, and the characteristics were so, so deep. I read this play and I went, oh my God, no one has ever written a play with all of these muscles for a Black man to really exercise. And then, um, Ellen said, well, he's not Black. I went, okay, okay. All right. You know, um, because seeking the work that happens, that is very important. Now I'm going to go and circle down to Celeste, because her now, Celeste, what did you just do? Did you turn that light on really light? Because you were the perfect coloring balance. Now your light
Well, I
is,
can push it back.
yeah, push it back. That's perfect now.
Okay.
So tell me, this particular subject that you have chosen in a culture that you're familiar with, because this is some of the works that you write, are works of things that you are very, very familiar with, and sometimes you stretch beyond that. Explain to me the importance of what it is that you found, why you wanted to write about this.
Well, first, I will say that the title is The Heirs of Cedar Branch. But, Lynnie, I think I'm going to go back to the original title, Heirs Property,
Hmm?
because
My
Cedar
favorite, my
Branch
favorite.
is a family name, a family location. And I said, everybody's going to think I'm talking about them when they see that title, Cedar Branch, all of that. And I'm not. I just liked those words. So, Heirs Property, Heirs of Cedar Branch came about through a grant from Guggenheim. So it's a grant, it's a Guggenheim Fellowship. And I had submitted different projects to Guggenheim for like 3 or 4 times in a row. So I finally got accepted when I submitted this project. And this project is about, really, it's about land justice and environmental racism. Wrapped around these issues or told around a Black family who has property in a rural Texas town. And yes, I am a part of the culture, but I was not a part of the rural culture. I was always a city girl. We'd go to the country, as we'd say, 2 weeks in the summertime. So I was unfamiliar and had a sensitivity about it. I wanted to portray them, you know, the way, they really are. So I had to do quite a bit of research and had to immerse myself into, quite a few different family stories about heirs property, which is property that is shared in common by family members. And you can imagine all of the havoc that creates. In this, my particular play, the family members, each one wants to do something different with the property. Some want to hold on to it, some want to sell it, some want to put some type of enterprise on the land. So there's a lot of chaos going on around that. But it's something that really happens in Black families all the time. And Black families in rural areas, their property is often exposed to environmental racism, landfills, and other toxic kind of enterprises like to move in where they are, drive them out, with the toxicity. And land justice. This particular family, they had land that had been in their family since the Civil War, and they started off with 200 acres. And in this year, they only had 40 acres because of different types of fraud that had been perpetrated
Patrick.
on
Mm-hmm.
the ancestors, who couldn't read or write, who couldn't sign contracts. So it's really about those two things, trying to, get legal papers to the land and trying to fight off a landfill company that wants to buy the land. And I did quite a bit of research, as I see it, and immersed myself in the rural culture, not realizing that I had grown up. I didn't live in the country, but my parents, my aunts, my uncles, everybody that I knew, they had come from that rural background, and they were always talking and telling us stories. And but I didn't pay it any attention until the time came to write this play, and then I realized, oh, here's history right here.
Mm.
Here they are. So it's
See,
been quite interesting.
as I listen to both of you, the similarity is that both of you have taken on subjects that you may not be intimately familiar with, but your process is similar in that in order to get to the point where it is something that you can live with, because I think having been around enough playwrights now over the last 10, 15 years, I realize that you all wrestle and tussle until you are satisfied with your first decision to your first decision to tell your story. So both of you have had a journey. Your journey, Ellen, is that, and I truly do believe this, that you were writing about a person, and now I realize we started off with Donald Trump. Lord have mercy. I
Oh,
didn't.
again.
I had, I mean, but you were writing about, again, we're writing about people that we not necessarily know because we're women. So now you're writing about a man, you know, and that's a
Yeah.
whole nother entity.
You know what's
This,
also very interesting to me? The question of land. This is obviously a very important matter because that's one of at the heart of this of my play as well.
Yes,
The Gullah Geechee lost their land to
exactly.
heirs property.
That that's it. Again, you see the similarities that you all have in this, and you understand the plays that are about land. You know, Raising the Sun is about land. It's about
Yeah.
land. Those historic play that we think about. Unentitled by Charles White, is a play that I brought to prominence when he had written the play and no one really had discovered it. And then the group started doing readings of it. And it's got a lovely life now, an award-winning life. It's about property. And the similarities of that is a very important thing because it brings out, even though you're in two different cultures, and I know about the Gullah because I've traced back to my great 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 grandmother to be in that region, and then they moved up to the panhandle of Florida. But when you look at, oh, what is the name of that beautiful film about the Gullah region?
Daughters of the Dust.
Daughters of the Dust. Thank you. And you look at the traditions that they have. My grandmother and her mother quilted. I have the quilts now. I have them in plastic because I don't want them to do anything. I mean, they're almost 100 years old. They quilted. They called their grandparents Nana. I've never called my grandmother anything but Nana. Her name was Lassie Stevens Godfrey, but all I knew was Nana from the time I could speak. And when I saw that film, I realized that my inheritance came from that region, really. It really did. And this was a region where, when women were taken to this region in enslavement, when they were taken off the ship, they were being chained together off the ship, that sometimes they would change 10, 15. They had all agreed when they got off, when they were to be taken off the ship, they would jump off the ship and drown themselves
Mm. Yeah,
because
and
they
the
didn't
idea
want
was
to.
to fly home.
Yes, to fly home because they knew that there was no way they were ever going to get back. They'd traveled too far. They knew that they would never get back. So as I see these two plays, as we discuss more and more, as I get rehearsal with you and I get rehearsal with Celeste, and I find that there are similarities in a play where two women are writing about things that they are discovering, and that the one constant in this play is this sensitive consultant, that my job is to be there to make sure that the accuracy is on both of these subjects that none of us are familiar with, but all of us want to talk about because that's what the arts is about. So I bring that all up because it's such an important element because recently, and I want to know your thoughts, about it, and having dealt with things that are not second nature because Celeste, you have written about things that you heard about all your life. Camp Logan is a historical fact in Texas. And all of that happened to those soldiers, and ultimately they got persecuted for it. You know this. You, Ellen, have written about plays that you're very familiar with, the humor in it. What is I want to say it right because you told me about Do I Hear $5 about an auction? It's an auction, a play in an auction taking place, and I know that kind of world, very familiar with it. And now you've both chosen to break that and come into something uh, that is different. But we are in a society sometimes that says uh, that we should always stick to what we know about as
Yeah.
performers, as writers. Where does the line draw for you? Celeste, I'm gonna let you go first. Where does the line draw for you about that you must write about only what you know? Because they tell you in school, write about what you know, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
All right,
Mhm.
but is that a parameter? Is that um, the borders? We can't cross those lines. Can we write about things that we don't know if we have done the work? If we and I don't want this to be a leading question because I hate it when people ask leading questions. So I'm trying to pose it. If we What do we do to make this possible so that if it's something that we're not familiar with, that we can be able to work on it and bring to it the accuracy that it deserves. What what do we do? And what don't we want to see when it's not done like that? But Celeste.
Well, I think we have to start off like you did there with a question. We have to ask ourselves, I want to write about this, but I don't know anything about it. I mean, should I? Could I? When I wrote Camp Logan, it's an all male play.
Mhm.
And I wrestled with myself for too long, trying to put females in the play somehow so that I could tell it through a female's, viewpoint, uh, trying, different characters, trying different ways to bring it in, so because this is all male play, I just cannot step into one man's shoes, much less seven men's shoes, one of whom is white. But, the story would not be told any other way. The story will dictate to you how it must be told. And after you've asked yourself all of the questions and had all of the debates with yourself, and you decide that you want to tackle it, well, then that's when you have to really, do the research, talk with people uh, in a particular culture or agenda. Watch them, like with Camp Logan, what I did was, of course, I did a lot of research, but I just started to watch men, you know, just look at them, see how they operate, how they move, how they talk, as opposed to women. And I discovered, well, men are talking, but they're not talking about anything. like women. They're not talking about, they're not sharing emotions and feelings and things. So I had to go back into the script and say, well, let me take some of this out. And when they do share it, they share it in a terse kind of uh dry kind of way. In other words, they aren't women. So I observed that and just had them just talking, just having banter. Men will banter and joke and all, but they're not really talking about anything deep, except on the soap operas. When you see the soap operas and the men are arguing and talking back and forth with the women in these scenes,
Yeah.
men don't do that,
Mm.
you know, but they have to for the scene for the soap opera. So I did a lot of observing. Uh, And I think that's what you have to do with whatever character you're doing. Like if I'm black and I'm doing a white character and vice versa, then you really just have to kind of observe over a period of time, how they act, what they say, what they don't say. So,
That's amazing. You know what? I'm sitting here and I'm like, that's right. You wrote a play about men. Now, uh, uh, I have to say, among one of my favorite plays is The Women, which is all about women. And it was directed though by a man. Each time they do it, in every rendition of it in the film version, it's always been a man. But I hadn't. It hit me like, yes, Camp Logan is not only something that you're not familiar with, but it also, again, it's cross culture, like we're talking about with Ellen. Now, Ellen, there are characters in your play that are white,
Mhm.
and that's fine. But your main two characters, one, Ronnie is you. I have to say to you, you nab her. She's what is it? You hit it out of the ballpark on her? Where did you who did you fashion her out of? Who did because I had nothing to do with it. She was right when I first saw her. So
I
what
think
did you
that
think about with Bonnie?
I think that through life, at this point in my life, you meet enough people so that she was there, she was alive. And I'll say something else that when I saw Celeste's play um,
She's talking about Greenwood.
about Greenwood, and it was an all black cast, and all I can tell you is it didn't matter. I mean, I didn't feel any separation. It was the commonality is humanity. That's what makes it work. And that's what I felt. There was a family there. There was a young couple that were in love. And so color, it didn't matter. All I felt was terribly, terribly sad
mm,
for the laughter that went on there, the giggling, the sweetness. And then I knew it was coming, but I didn't see it coming. And I really said it when I came to your rehearsal that I couldn't move. And Lynnie was very helpful. Lynnie said she said to me, what was she going to say? She said to me, Ellen, she said, we go on. And that was it. We go on. So really, the more you open your life, the more you don't see that. Or if you do see color, you see it in a very empathetic way. Color for what? What's going on? What's happening to the people that you're watching? And you see the terrible loss that's about to happen. So I think that's what worked for me as well. It was it's the humanity in the characters that were coming out as I was writing it. And so I could understand, you picture this young woman behind the bar and and so on. And then you find, what's her problem, what's going on in her life. So the humanity just overrides the whole thing. And
What?
it wasn't about me as a stranger looking into your play, your population. it got me. It got me on the deepest level.
I,
And that's what life is. So the commonality is humanity.
yeah. Now, I'm going to say this because you won't believe it. We only have about 12 minutes left in this hour. I mean, this it just goes. It runs on. We're going to do a little bit of, so we'll stop this and we'll do a little after show, afterthoughts. But I want to give there are several people here. I want to give them an opportunity if they want to ask a question. I want to, because this conversation will continue as I both informed you tonight, we've all been invited to have this conversation again on a whole nother medium about what we are doing, about this process that we are doing. All of us are doing a process. But before I do anything else, I want to be able to see if there's any hands raised or anything that anybody has any questions that they want to pose to you for any reason. I'm going to, give them a moment. And then I think what will be for now our closing our closing question that I have for both of you. And it's gone so fast. I mean, we haven't even tipped the iceberg of what I want to talk about. So I look forward to not working with you all, will answer all of it, but doing it for the public. They will see the result, but I want them to also see the process and what's important, that was in the process, but what may and sometimes be missing from the process. And we haven't gotten to that yet. You know, I don't see anybody doing anything, so I'm going to ask this question, and this is the question I have. You both have done your research, um, uh, and you've gotten to the point where you're familiar. Uh, Celeste, when you were writing that white um, character, did you fashion it after anyone that you knew?
I did. I didn't know them personally, but I fashioned this one white male character who was the captain of the battalion. I fashioned him. I even took his name. I fashioned him after a supervisor, white supervisor that my dad had on his job at the Veterans Hospital, Zelke. I even took his name to make sure that I held on to it. And I fashioned him after Zelke, who was bombastic and arrogant. And yet, there were times when he was buddy buddy, he would force his good humor, on the workers, or the black workers, they're the black male workers. So I did. I fashioned him on a man that daddy would come home every day complaining about.
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
And Ellen, when you were writing these characters, some black, some white, was anybody in mind that any of them reminded you of?
I tell you the truth, I don't know if I've said this before at a meeting that you were at. I don't know, but I've heard my husband say this. He's a writer, and he'll say sometimes, the boys in the basement wrote that one. In other words, where did that come from? You know, and I think that's how I feel, that when something is right, when I get it right, it's like, where did that come from? It's the unconscious. It's the boys in the basement, you know,
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
put that together. So I can't say that there's anybody I know.
Mhm.
It's just that, again, as I become more human in my life, I can create a character. I can create a human,
Yeah,
because I am more sensitive to the people around me.
I think you're sensitive to the universality that we're all human, that
That's
we
right.
all
Yeah.
we have that we experience all these things. But now let's look on the other side. There have been, and we're only going to have about 10 minutes to deal with this, but there have been portrayals of people uh, in all of our cultures that were not necessarily things that we agreed with. Um, do you think there's no formula for anything, but do you think that I think that maybe a little bit more time and effort could have put into those portrayals and those choices so that when you are out of your box, it's not such a criminal feeling for people to say, "Oh, you're going to write about a culture you don't know anything about," because they don't realize the time and the effort. What I think they're reflecting on, and I'm probably answering my own question, is they're reflecting on the result of people not doing what you all are talking about. And I think that's what the purpose of all of this is. I've talked to a lot of producers who say that they have people who want to write about cultures that they don't know about, but they sit down and just start writing about what they see on television, what
Yeah.
they see in the street, but they don't, or what their imagination takes them to, when they're riding on the subway, when they're doing those things. What would you say to these people from your experience? What would you say for them, the journey that a little bit more of the journey that they could take in that? Celeste.
You mean in terms of them understanding
So that
why?
there's more of an accuracy to the character development and execution than we see in some of the characteristics that we see in people that don't resemble anything of any
Mm-hmm,
of the cultures that we're talking about.
mm-hmm,
What
mm-hmm.
would you say, to people, even of the same race, who write something that isn't as accurate or complimentary? What would you say for them to think about?
Well, I've noticed that often people don't recognize themselves in plays. They don't know the effort that you put into, uh, you know, bringing these characters about, and they don't recognize themselves. They will see themselves as the other person. Let's see, how can I describe it? Um, I had a play, with Once in a Lifetime. You had the husband playing the average husband, and you had the lover. Well, all of the men thought that they were the lover. When they would come up, oh, I could play that character. I'm like, no, you're not. You're the him. Or I'd have a hypochondriac in a play, and everybody would come up and say, oh, that's just so terrible. She was just such a hypochondriac. I think, yeah, that's you. But they don't recognize themselves. Now, with the character Zelke, the white captain, uh, I thought, well, God, I hope he's not too stereotypical, because sometimes real life, it seems like a stereotype, but that's just the way they are. That's why you have to, dramatize things. You can't just, and I'm sure Ella knows, just put things on stage just the way they are. You really have to dramatize it because real life just won't seem real.
Mm-hmm,
Uh,
mm-hmm,
Real life will seem fake. But
mm-hmm.
they I thought people were going to have a problem with the Zelke character. Now the actors have a problem with him. The white actors portraying him, but they do it very well. But they'd like for him to have a little bit more, sensitivity. He's not just that. And I know, but for the play, I had to have uh, I had to have a villain because all of the action takes
Exactly.
place in the barracks, doesn't go out. So anyway, but all of the audience members, black and white, they didn't feel like he was stereotypical. They run up to him and they love him. The actors were scared to go out and meet the audience because they were so terrible. But the audience runs up to him and they love him because of the sacrifice they made to play that character. They knew, we know that's not you as an actor, but we appreciate your service. You
Yes.
portrayed him like so many of us know some of them to be, you know.
Mhm.
So I don't know if I answered it, but
No, but
uh,
it's there. I'll say something about, but I want to get Ellen in before we come to the end of the because I know exactly what you mean about playing a villain and being scared to come out, and then when you come out, people absolutely adore you because. But Ellen,
My
what do you?
answer to that is I went to a meeting once. It was Women in the Arts and Media. They had a panel discussion. At the moment, I can't tell you the name of the woman on the panel. It was a Black woman, and she was a filmmaker, I believe. I have my notes, but not in front of me. And I just did it. I went up to her afterward and I told her, I said, okay, here's my story. I'm writing, this was a while ago. I said, I'm writing a play about the Gullah, someone in the Gullah Geechee culture. So she said, oh, I thought, oh no, oh my God. She said, oh, she says, that's an old one. That's an old one. She says, you need a guide. Just like that, you need a guide. And she didn't go into it. And the words sat with me. And I realized that that is what is important. So Lynnie has been my guide, not that she knows the Gullah Geechee culture, but she knows enough of what I don't know. And so at the last meeting of rehearsal, you talked about that this whole idea about a Black person having an antenna regarding a white person who she senses might be mixed race. And I took it. There's no reason to question it. I took it. And then as I'm writing, I see where does she look at him and say, wait a minute, who are you anyway? Because I don't know if I have that there. And now I thought about it and I said yes. So I listen, you need a guide. And I tell you, when all is said and done, I may have to find a guide in the Gullah Geechee corridor and say, is something ringing false to you? And then as the writer, I have to make a decision. Am I going to write the character that this person has in mind? Or am I going to take this advice from my character? And I think that's a very important thing, this concept of a guide.
I think that's absolutely, we're going to end on that because that's where we'll begin the next time we talk about this. But I think that all of us need a guide. And I think that's
Uh,
what I was talking about. I think the reason why we see things that maybe are not as accurate is because they haven't had a guide. And it's for people who of the same race could write something, of different races who could write something. It's not because you are of the same race that you understand, but you have a sensitivity and a respect for that culture that may be missing elsewhere. Now I'm going to stop here because we're at the end of our hour. I mean, I could sit here and talk to both of you, but we're going to be in rehearsal. So in the next year, we will be working on these plays, and I'm very excited about both of these plays. And we do have a male who's coming in, Philip Kaplan, who he has his play, and he's written a play. And how about men who always write plays about women? And how do they do? Who is their guy? What is their, I said, so this is something that we have to really think about, and we're so happy that we have the opportunity, that people want to hear a little bit more about it. And I hope more people will come and think about it. But at this point in time, it is time for me to say thank you very much, both of you, for coming in here. I want you to hold on because we're going to do a little teaser so we can put it on Facebook so people will understand what we're talking about. Just continuing. Um, and I want to thank you all for attending. I want to thank you all for coming in and being here with us at Lynnie Godfrey Straight No Chaser, Part A. And we probably won't we get a resolution until we get to Part Z. But it's okay. We had the thoughts. That's what the arts are about. So thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you on the radio, see you on this. and Lynnie Godfrey, Straight No Chaser.